Hey, Amish, what's up? Long time. I don't think we've spoken in like the last few months, I think.
Yes, that is correct. But I always keep following you. So, I try to kind of keep imbibing and absorbing the wisdom of life, math, money. So that way we're definitely in touch that, your mind I can kind of see the workings of.
I'm glad you like the content though. And I'm always a little embarrassed when someone says, the wisdom of life, math, money, because, you know, personally, like the way I think, there are a lot of things I'm yet to learn and a lot of lessons I'm still learning. So when someone says, you're very wise or here's your wisdom, like it can feel that way, but I'm also like figuring things out as I go.
Fantastic. Imposter syndrome, Harsh, is the hallmark of a wise man. Okay. So if you don't have it, that is also a little bit of a concern, right? So we try to balance both, right? I talk so much about divorce law, and some days I feel like, do I even know anything at all? Anything at all? I'm a complete idiot. I'm a complete doofus. But then again, I have to, again, a person who thinks this way, I have to tell myself, no, I know my stuff. I know a lot about divorce law. I have to remind myself every single day, and uh, otherwise it's like very, you can get, especially with all the negativity that you have on the internet, right? It gets very easy to kind of get caught up and have those voices kind of come up in your head.
Oh, yeah. So there's actually a scientific reason behind it. So when humans evolved, we evolved in like small villages and small communities of like 100, 150 people. And what would happen is that if you did not actually care what are the things you were hearing about yourself, if you didn't care about it, your chances of survival were much lower. So you evolve to care about what people think of you. But what happens is we did not evolve to deal with people on social media scale, right? Like you have millions of people who watch you, read you, and let's say like 5,000 people leave negative comments and 995,000 people leave like positive comments. Those 5,000 negative comments, even though they're in a minority, your brain is still wired to like catch them because that's what it always did to survive. If your tribe didn't like you, you would get kicked out of the tribe and then you would die. And those
Yeah.
genes are like in all of us, and we did not evolve for the social media stuff, right? Like thousands of people telling us like these are my opinions on you, and yeah, this is just something you have to deal with, and we did not evolve for it. And I would say like for people like you, right, it's definitely, I would say, easier because you are more mature, right? You have more life experience. But when I see like people who are like 21 years old and they have like so many followers and people are telling them, You are this, you are that, you are that," all the negativity affects them a lot more, especially for the women. They are more sensitive. Like gone on Instagram and a girl posts a picture, she is doing it for validation, attention, whatever reason, right? I'm not judging her for it. But then when people say, hey, you look beautiful, or they say you look like shit, both of these comments are like really going in the person's head and like messing with it in like different ways. Not good for
Right.
you.
Hmm. Okay. We'll talk about women on Instagram later, but how do you deal with it? The negativity and the negative comments.
Personally, I don't read my comments anymore. So like I'll tell you what, like so last year, right, like I had like I keep getting these like journalists, right, quote unquote journalists who write articles about me. And lately,
Okay.
like a few years ago, I just stopped like name searching myself. And now whenever I like find a news article that's published about me, it was like 6 7 months ago, no one cares about news anymore. And
Hmm.
I will try to troll them. Like I'll tell them, my pronouns is like she, her, and then try to get them to edit the pronouns on their article, which they will often do. Like there are many articles
Uh,
about me, like, yeah, this female influencer does not like soap.
beat them at their own game. Fantastic, dude. Very cool.
Yeah, because see, these
But
guys really believe in all this stuff, right? They're idiots.
hmm, hmm. So one is not reading the comments. One problem with this that I have seen is that people who are close friends or family, associates, or somebody else who I've had an association with, someone who perhaps sends me reels on a daily basis, and I do like them and I do laugh at them. Now that person sends me a negative comment that they read about me somewhere, and then they say, "Just watch out," or something like that, right? That becomes a little difficult for me. Tell me, how do you deal with that?
I am fortunate to not have to deal with that being anonymous, right? The only
Okay.
people who know about my profile are like my wife and like my close family. So I don't actually have to deal with that, but that can be tough, right? Because then you have to measure what you say. I'll give you an example. So one of my clients is a social media influencer, and what this person sells is that he imports peptides from China. Okay, so like he's like importing SARMs and everything and selling them, and one of his like close friends found his profile. And he's like, "Oh, you're gonna kill people. This is bad for health. You're killing people." And like he lost that relationship forever because there's no explanation he can give that will be acceptable to the other person, right? Like for the other person, like Psalms, like steroids, right? Like you're giving selling people steroid, it's bad for health. And for this guy, this is more like a weight loss, like healing drug. So the view is so different. So it's just one of those things, right? You have to find your tribe, find people who do not like, who you don't have to see eye to eye with everybody. Some people are like just gonna disagree with you, and you just have to
Hmm.
find people who don't do that. It's a part of
Makes sense.
life.
I am definitely curious. Life lessons from Life Math Money on, because we talk a lot about divorce law. What are you, and not just because you're a celebrity, but because you talk so much about relationships, about the human nature of relationships, the human dynamics, so social dynamics as well, for the people who watch us. And I'm sure a lot of us, a lot of our followers have this mutual interest on how to make a successful marriage work. What are your inputs?
Okay, so go with the fundamentals, right? Okay, so what do you want in a marriage? Now, what people look for are the very superficial things which matter, but they don't actually contribute to the success of a marriage, right? Like height,
Hmm.
intelligence, all of these things matter, but they don't actually contribute to the success of a marriage, right? The girl's beauty or the guy's beauty, things like that, right? But what is actually going to contribute to the longevity of a good marriage is compatibility, right? Do you and your partner think similarly about the things that actually matter? Do you both want the same number of children? Do you have the same viewpoints on major things like religion, right? Like I know a couple, like this is a client of mine, right? Like he was dating this girl, like a Sikh girl, and this is a Hindu guy, and like they were dating for 10 years, but the reason for their breakup is that they could not determine what religion they want to raise their kids as. So the girl is like, the kid has to be Sikh, and the guy is like, the kid has to be Hindu. And this is like over, right? Like this is something you should have discussed a long time ago. 10 years have gone by and now you're talking about it. So
Right.
then you want to make sure that both people's families are good, right? Like I'll tell you what, since I'm a guy, I have a guy's perspective, so I'm going to talk about like the female requirements, right? Let's take a girl whose mother is divorced and whose sister is divorced. Okay, she's gonna be much more open to the concept of divorce. So the moment you have like a bad moment in your relationship, right, you have a fight or something, in her mind the option, I can always just divorce this guy, is always there. So you want a family that's intact, and where divorce is considered to be like a very last resort, or something you should never do, as opposed to something you can always do. So because it's a bad fundamental thing, right, you don't want that to be like a foundation of a marriage where it is like an option that you can always take. So you want to fix that. You don't want to make you want to make sure that this problem doesn't happen to you. Then there are several other things which contribute to a marriage, right? Like for example, take anybody's temper. Now, is the person you're married to, do they have a level head? Because there are certain men and certain women who get really angry really fast, and they become out of control and they start screaming, and typically those marriages are not happy, right? So you have to make sure that the person you're marrying can control their anger, because everything, over the years, right, the romance effect tends to fade. Like in the first year it's very strong, but then it like tends to fade, and you are left with the actual personality of the person. And let's say you're married to a guy or married to a girl who gets like very pissed off and like starts screaming in your face every day, and at that point you're like, oh my god, like I messed up, right? Like now what do I do? And that kind of
Right.
makes those, there's a Sun Tzu saying, I think, where if you have like a neighbor and you are frequently conflicting with your neighbor is going to turn into an enemy. So that's what happens between people as well, right? Like you're always fighting with your wife or husband. then they will slowly like fall out of love with you and think of you as a conflicting party, like an enemy. So you want to make sure the person has a good temper. And the way to test for this is to like come up with like a
Hmm.
fictitious argument where you are wrong, okay, where you are wrong, and just like get into this fight just as a test. And if your partner understands that, okay, this person is really angry, I should like just take it easy now and then bring it up later, like, hey, I'm sorry, let's talk about this later. And then later when the person is calmer, they bring it up. That's a good, person for a spouse. If they're always just asserting, I'm right, I'm right, I'm right, that's a red flag. I'm not saying it's like total make or break factor, but it's a big reason why a lot of people get divorced. Then
Hmm.
another thing I will say is that they should have decent habits, in the sense things like, if they're abusing alcohol or abusing drugs, these are things that will frequently contribute to divorces, right? Like I've seen this happen more often in poorer people in India. Like if you have like I've had so many maids and cooks and everything in my like
Hmm.
home, and typically when they get divorced, the reason is like my husband drinks too much and like beats me up or things something like that, right? Like not always, but alcohol abuse is something you definitely want to avoid. It's more common in poor people, like, with men, right? Like in poorer societies, men tend to drink much more, and in richer societies, at least in India, women tend to drink more because they view it as, like we are like the, we're like empowered now, even though you are just poisoning your body. So you want to make sure that if you are okay with the spouse that drinks, at least they drink responsibly. They're not like proud of being drunks. There are people like this. So
Hmm.
that's a bad thing for the future. Like it's a, like if I was to make like a list of, like if I was to make an AI that would analyze the components of a person and like figure out the likelihood of divorce, I am fairly certain that the embedded space, the last level of the AI, will try to determine, okay, if does this person drink a lot or not, and if it does, like the probability of like divorce would be like higher. So that's one other thing that you want to make sure. Then there are like basic things, over time, that you want to make sure that you are both physically fit and healthy. Because let's say what happens is in India, right, like women tend to get fatter and fatter over time. Like if you look at like a 21-year-old girl in India, she's
Hmm.
like somewhat fit, okay, let's go with somewhat fit. But then at 30, like they become like auntie looks, like they become fatter and tubbier. And the same thing happens to men, right? Like men at 21 are much fitter than men at 30, right? They have like a distended stomach. And what happens is when you are less fit, when you have like obesity, overweight, your hormones are not good, your sexual libido, it goes down by a lot, especially for women. And then you end up in a marriage where there's very little sex because the woman is not attracted to the guy because he looks like shit. And the guy, he can't get proper erections. He's just like, no, he can't like make the girl happy. And that's also like a big contributing factor in divorces that no one actually talks about, because it's like shameful to
Hmm.
talk about it in the country. But you need to maintain your health, and you need to encourage your partner to do so as well. Because over time, right, like your bedroom will die if you are both unfit, because the libido, it just would not be there. Like there is no like coming back from that. So you need to make sure you're
Another aspect
healthy.
is children. Right? If you're not fit, having children becomes a big problem.
Definitely, right? So like there are like people nowadays, they will need like IVF and everything at like 32. And I mean, like, it's not good. It's not great. You need to make sure that you are healthy, fit. And if you want to have kids, I would recommend doing it in your 20s. Like doing it at 35 is just much harder. I'm not saying it's impossible, right? Like it's not like you become 35 and then you can't have kids. It's just much harder. Not just physically, not just like the getting pregnant part, but also like taking care of kids. And it's much harder. I know a lot of clients and a lot of people who do it. It's way harder to do at like 35 than to do it at like 28.
Hmm. In fact, now I don't know if like this is correct or not. Maybe if you can correct me if you know about it. I actually read in this one book quite a few years ago this concept. I think the name of the book, as you mentioned, right, get married and have kids in your 20s. There's this, I think, a psychologist called, I don't remember the name, but the name of the book was The Defining Decade, in which
Meg
the
Jay,
yes,
Dr.
this
Meg
this
Jay.
yeah. So okay, so have you read the book?
Yeah, I read it when I was like 16, I think. I don't remember now, but it's a
It's
long
been
time ago.
a long time for me as well. And one thing I remember, because I had this misconception that as a man, it doesn't matter at what age you have a child. But she mentioned, now maybe this is correct, maybe not, that the older the guy, the higher the chances that even when he's contributing the sperm, right, the chances of the child having Down syndrome from such a man is far higher in comparison to a man who does this in his 20s. So if you're in your 30s, the chances of the child having Down syndrome are significantly higher. So that is something that, I did not know. And then whenever I would have conversations, I would tell people that if you do want kids, you should definitely consider this aspect as well.
It definitely exists. Although I will say that, some of this is about luck, right? You can do everything right and you can still have like a kid that's not like neurotypical or something like that, right? It's some
Hmm.
of it is definitely luck. And it's one of the fears I have in my own life. My wife is pregnant right now, right? And I'm like, well, the one thing I wish from God is to make sure the kid is completely healthy. So it's
Right.
it's one of those things you can never fully control, but it definitely, I'll tell you what, right? My wife is pregnant for like 5 months now, and she hasn't vomited once. And she read a book by a woman called Ina May, which is one of the most popular pregnancy books out there. And apparently, like, if when women are like vomiting a lot when they're pregnant, it's typically a sign that the sperm quality was not super high. And I'm in very good health right now, right? Like, there have been times in my life where I was not fit. Like, I was strong but not fit. But when my wife got pregnant, I was doing a lot of cardio. I was lifting more weights. I think I deadlifted like 180 kilos. So the point is that my wife did not have to go through a lot of these pregnancy symptoms which people come to expect, where she has to vomit and have diarrhea and all. My wife is perfectly fine, right? So the sperm quality definitely makes a big difference on the kid. And
Hmm.
my wife herself is also like very healthy, very fit. Like, her deadlift is like 100 kilos, right, for a girl, which is very good. So
Incredible. Yeah.
all of that definitely plays a big role. I think health is like the most neglected part of an Indian family's life, largely because we have like a history of being poor. So we all like value education a lot, which is a good thing. But at least back when I was a kid, right? Like, if I was to go to like play sports or something, my family would be like, "How is this going to help you make money? You should study hard." And
Hmm.
the culture was that, why would you go to a gym? You should climb stairs and fill buckets and carry buckets. They were not like being evil, right? It was just like they lacked knowledge. So one of those
It's
things we
funny you
have
say
we
that. My father has always, he's also a lawyer. He's always maintained that, you know, baniye upar se vakil, you should not be going to the gym. You should go out for a quick run, quick sprint. That's all the time that you can have. The rest of the time, you should be focusing on your profession, your work. And how do we get into the nuances of explaining that just running, or just wake up in the morning and have your milk with almonds is not enough? I mean, obviously I've read a lot of your material on your opinion about health, so I also understand that you would agree with agree that this is not the right this thing. But exactly what you said, the whole mindset of focus on work, focus on studies.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, right? Like, I know this is, I'm not trying to like sound insensitive to other people here, but think of it like this, right? Like, I'll tell you, at least with me, right? I might make like so I have like multiple businesses, right? I have an affiliate marketing company, I have a tax consulting firm, blah blah blah. And on like a good month, I might make like $300,000, right? Which is like a lot of money in Indian rupees, okay? Like, in
Sure.
Indian rupees, that's like a lot of money, okay? And I'm not saying it's not. At some point, I'm gonna die, and all this money is gonna be here, okay? Like, and I could die like tomorrow by getting hit by a car. It could happen at 60 with a heart attack, or at 80 or 90 or what other age, right? And the money you make is gonna stay here on this planet, and you are not gonna carry it up with you to God, or whichever God you believe in, okay? So money is certainly valuable, but it's like a part of the game, right? It is not the complete game, because you just there how much can you even spend, in the sense, unless, even if you spend a lot, right, you are not going to spend crores and crores every month, like barring certain celebrity type people aside, like I can't do it, right? Even if I try to spend money, I just can't spend that much money. I'm very cheap. So the thing is that what actually enables a good life, okay, you have to think of it like this: what does a good
Hmm.
life look like? A good life, you want to have good physical health, where you don't have any health problems, where you can do what you want to do without being like, my back hurts, I can't do this, I can't do that, I'm not strong enough, I get too tired, I can't enjoy it, things like that, right? You want to have enough money to be able to sustain all of your needs, to be able to meet reasonable wants, to be able to support your family, to make sure your kids go to a decent school, they get the right coaching they need. If they want to start a business, you can give them seed capital, things like that, right? They shouldn't have to beg for money to a VC, like, hey, please give me some money for 30% of my startup. They shouldn't have to do that, right? Like, you should be able to help with that. Then what do you need for a good life? You need a good family, right? Like, you need a wife or like a husband that loves you, a mother or father to look after, or they care for you. You want to have kids, right? Because I've seen a lot of very rich people. Like, I have a client whose net worth is $300 million, okay, and he has no kids whatsoever. And at this point, he's just going crazy because says, what can you even do? Like, his wife is like obese, and all he does is just watch movies and TV all day, and collect rent from his properties, and there's no like real point in not having kids. This is just my opinion, right?
No,
So
but is this guy someone who wants kids?
this guy wants kids now, right? Now, when he's like
Hmm.
60 years old, he wants to have kids. Back when he was 20s, he was like, no, kids are bad. And, I would rather travel and what have you. But, after you travel quite a bit, travel becomes like, okay, so I've been to all these countries. I've seen everything. Now, I'm 40 years old now. What do I do? I come home
Hmm.
and now what? Like, I just like watch TV. Like, I
Yeah.
already spent so much time with my wife. I know everything about it. There's nothing much left to do, right? Like, nature intended for you to contribute to the next generation and look after them, and it's something like nature does not care about your happiness and success, right? Like, nature only cares about whether you produce the next generation, and whether they survive or not. So I would say it's a long term mistake to not have kids, but that's just my opinion. It's not like set in stone, it's just how I think about the world. And then I would say you need to have freedom. And this fourth point is really important and something a lot of people miss. Like, can you wear what you want to wear? Can you say what you want to say? Can you be where you want to be? Or does someone else tell you what to do, what to say, what to wear, where to be? It could be like you're an employee or, slave or what have you. Like, different time periods have different versions of this. Like, 500 years ago, it could be like you were a slave somewhere. 300 years ago, you were like a British colonial person, and some Britisher was telling you, do this, wear that. Today you're like a low class employee, like working for 10,000 rupees at McDonald's or something, something like that, right? Not shitting on them, just like pointing out the reality, right? Like,
And then
someone
you
is
are
like,
paying taxes, and then you are going to concerts, and then you're eating crap. And that's how is that not exactly being a slave? Right. That's
exactly. I will say that India has a very unique thing where we have a lot of poor people and a lot of people who can afford like 35,000 rupees for a concert. I'm very shocked by that sometimes.
hmm.
We
You
do
know,
have a lot of entrepreneurial people now, so that's good. Because I
we
was
have a
speaking
lot of.
to entrepreneurial people who want to build businesses online. Because every
Right.
time I speak to like someone on the internet, right, and they're like selling something or have some kind of business, 50% of the time it's an Indian. Like, I'm not even joking. 50% of the time the person is Indian. Now they could have like a different name or something, right? Like, they could have like an anonymous account or something or the other going on, but there's something in a lot of Indian people that makes them want to build a business.
Hmm. Talk about some of these opportunities with people so that they can have a little inspiration as well.
So let's say that someone wants to build, like, someone has no online income. Okay, what can you do? And the simplest way, I'll tell you the super simple way to do it is to learn some kind of high demand, high value skill, right? It could be, you learn web design, or you learn web development, or you learn copywriting, or you learn like, how to edit, create videos, you learn graphic design, something very simple, not super complex. And then all you have to do is send a whole lot of cold emails out, like, hey, can I do this to you for you, blah blah blah. You could do like the first 10 few pieces of work for free, which a lot of people do in exchange for a testimonial. And then when you have a few testimonials, then you can actually like start charging money. I know a lot of people who build their businesses like this, and that actually changed my mind on something. So earlier I was very against selling time for money. I was like, why would you do that? Never sell time for money, right? Because my background is affiliate marketing. But over time I noticed that this doing the simple way first is actually better than doing the complex but more scalable way right away. Because when you haven't even made like, $1,000 online, it's just too hard to think of, okay, I need to run an ad and I need to find a product and I need to get like an affiliate commission or blah blah blah, right? Simple things. Learn some kind of skill that people will pay for and then sell the skill. To give you an example, let's say someone is a lawyer, okay, like someone in your field. I don't know how many lawyers watch you, but let's say someone is a lawyer.
A
Now,
lot of
I
them
have
do. A significant
okay,
portion, yeah.
I have a friend who a few days ago, right? This is like he's a dance teacher, so it's a very simple like guy, and he got hit by a car and he fell from his scooter and he got hurt. Then he got out of his car and beat the crap out of the driver, right? So he beat the shit out of the guy, right? And then the police arrested them both, and then he spent like a few days in jail, and then he had to get a medical certificate from a government hospital, and like a lot of things had to happen. But what do you actually do with this? Like, how would you handle it if you got into like how would you handle it if you got in a car crash? Now these are questions a lot of people have, right? Like, what to do if you hit a car? What do you do if you happen to get hit by a car? What do you do if you get in a street fight, right? So you could make like a simple product that you could sell for like $50 $100 or like 5,000 Indian rupees, and it could be like a 12-hour course on like, you know law for Indian citizens, and it could cover all the common questions, handling a street fight, what should you do. Like a lot of people don't know this stuff, right? Like if you take a WhatsApp screenshot as evidence, it should have the phone number. If you have a contact saved, then a lot of times the court will be like, yeah, this is nonsense, we're not gonna really consider it. Like happens to a few people, right? So all of these things are things that people don't actually know, but they want to know, right? People want to know like what happens to you if you get hit by a car, what is the best way to react, how to handle the situation. And it's a product that anybody can build. It doesn't have to be you. Any lawyer can build it and start marketing it. And these are simple things that a lot of people can do, but then no one does it. Like it's one of those things where it's easy, low hanging fruit, but people want to do the complicated things. They want to like think, this is not going to make me a billionaire. They want to start Tesla. Like they don't want to do the
Right.
simple things. So I will say do the simple things. It's easy. Make your first few thousand bucks online before you try to like do something very complex. Like simple things. I would learn a skill, sell it. Or if you are already skilled at something the public is interested in, like then you can like sell that information or something like that. Like even with this whole
So,
divorce, right? I'm sure you can make
hmm.
like a small course and sell it for like 3,000 rupees and get a lot of sales, right? And it would help a lot of people out.
So yeah, I mean, I have contemplated kind of doing that, but I have professional constraints. Insofar as the Advocates Act and the Bar Council, they mandate that my only and only job should be advocacy, right? Advising clients. Now, some people might argue that me creating a course like this is also benefiting the people and is benefiting is in line with my work of advocacy. But I try to kind of err on the side of caution. But I invite anybody who's watching this, who's an advocate, or who is maybe a qualified lawyer but not an advocate, or maybe has knowledge about this, to definitely give it a shot. One thing though is a personal curiosity, because I have a lot of entrepreneur friends, and one thing that has come up in a lot of discussions with these entrepreneur friends when I listen to them, they say that Indians don't really like to spend money on digital products. And that has been a common theme that I've heard over the years. What are your thoughts on that?
It depends on who you're marketing to and what you're marketing, right? Like with Life Math Money, right? This is a pure hobby that I've monetized. But I'll tell you what, I would say about 30% of my sales come from Indians, and 30% of like Life Math Money sales is like $10,000 a month, right? So,
Hmm.
and this is like a hobby for me. This is not like what I do for a living, right? This is like, money I would just buy like crypto or like, just like chill from. So
Right.
Indians do purchase digital products. It's just that it depends on the segment of society you're targeting and helping. Now, if you are making a digital product on that's useful for students, right? And students are known for not purchasing anything, they're very broke, then you will not have any sales because you cannot like target a segment of the market that's really broke, like they don't have any money. How will they buy from you, right? It's harder to do. On the other hand, if you're targeting professionals, right, let's say you make an Excel course and you're targeting professionals who are using Excel a lot and the course is like 5,000 rupees, a lot of people will purchase that course. I'm not saying everybody would, but you will certainly make like quite a bit of sales, selling an Excel course where people can like get really good at it, and there's some kind of forum or customer support to teach them, and you market it properly. So there's definitely a big market in India for it. I would say it's a limiting belief to think that Indians don't pay for anything.
Mm-hmm.
Just make sure that the people you're marketing to can actually afford your product. I've seen a lot of these mistakes people do where they start a business, the product they're selling is meant for like a certain segment, but that segment cannot afford that product. Like it's just not there. Like like if you have a health snack, okay, and the health snack costs 60 rupees, for example, and you're selling it in a tier 2 city, people are not going to buy it. Like people are too cheap in tier 2 cities, or not cheap, like they can't afford it, or they don't want to spend on this. They are only happy to pay 10 rupees for it. But in like a bigger city like Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, all of these places, you can easily sell a 60 rupee snack. So people will pay for it. Just make sure you are niching correctly, targeting correctly, and don't use it as an excuse.
You mentioned this. I remember paying, I think, £7 for a cup of coffee in London, and the Delhi wala inside of me was screaming in pain because I had to. I am just running the math, like 100, almost 110 rupees per pound, 750 rupees for a cup of coffee, which obviously, if you talk to, say, my mother, she'll be like, why do you have to spend more than 20 rupees on a cup of coffee, right? And then
Yes.
it's like Starbucks in Delhi or in Mumbai, it'll be 300, and then more than double that in another city. Very
Yeah, but think about the
right.
other. Think of the other side. Let's say that you find a way to earn an income in the dollar or the pound or some other foreign currency. Now you're selling products where you are making in a foreign currency and you're spending it in India. Now you have the reverse effect, right? So even like $25,000 a month, sorry, a year. Forget month, right? I said that by mistake. Let's say $25,000 a year, and now you're making like a significantly big amount of money in Indian rupees. So it definitely works both ways. So it's like if you are someone who travels a lot and earns in rupees, it will feel like a curse. On the other hand, if you're earning in their currency, then it's like amazing, right? Like India is the best place to be, right? Everything is so cheap.
Hmm.
So the perspective is there. I will say that you know a lot of things in life are about making more money rather than controlling your spending. And I say that as someone who has like a degree, like, in like I was a CA for a long time, but I still own a tax consulting firm. Although my brother and my father handle it now, I don't actually, like, I'm not involved in the operations of it. And I
Okay.
used to earlier, I would tell clients, you should save money and blah blah blah. And I would still do that if someone is like a salaried person. But if someone is a businessman, right, I'm like, don't worry about saving money. Like, don't be like, I'm not going to buy this, it's too expensive. Forget that. Try to make sure that your business is growing at a good rate, like 20-30% a year. And after a certain point, how much can you spend, right? Like, your business has to grow. That has to be your main concern. Find a way to earn more money rather than try to save on little purchases. For salaried people, they don't really have a choice. So I mean, the best I can say is, like, don't waste your money. But for businessmen, like,
Hmm.
make more money. Like, you can spend as much as you want as long as you're making a lot of money.
I have two things to say on that. One is, I have a performance coach who tells everybody, whenever we do these group discussions, he says, and very similar to what you said, he says, find something that you want to spend money on, be it business class tickets, luxury cars, the best experiences. Find what you want to spend your money on, and then figure out a way on how you can afford it, rather than saying, money now, how do I spend it and budget it. He says find the things that you truly want, no matter how irrational it may be for you to want them, and then work backwards and ask yourself, how can I afford this particular item or this experience, or anything else. And another thing I'd say, Harsh, is employees, for them to say, for us to tell them you should focus on saving. I've realized one thing, and I tell all my friends who are employees that, especially in today's time, you cannot afford to think like an employee. You cannot afford to think, I am an employee, I have a salary, this is my income, this is how I spend. I'm always encouraging my friends, my associates, think of yourself as an independent business owner, even if you're in a job, and figure out what is it that I can do in this business slash job that I have, where I can say maybe deliver more value to the customer slash the boss, so that they would be happy to pay me more of my, say, fee slash my compensation slash my salary. So I think it's in today's time, for you to think I'm an employee, right, and I make my 50,000 a month, or my 1 lakh, or my 5 lakhs a month, is very I mean, it really holds you back, really holds you back.
I agree with you there. Like, you, if you're an employee, you have to think of it as like you're running a special business with only one customer, and you also have to be smart about it, right? You have to make sure your customer is willing and able to pay you, at least give a portion of what you're worth. Because see, I completely agree with you that you should work hard and put in like your best foot forward. But sometimes people are like working for people who are never gonna pay them like a good
Hmm.
amount of money, right? Like the employer could be too cheap or what have you. And at that point, you have to change your customer. You need to find a better job. So
Agreed,
all of
agreed.
those considerations are in place, right? I will say the problem with the whole salaried employee thing is that the salary doesn't, like, other than for professionals, right, like lawyers, CAs, and things like that, it doesn't go up nearly as fast as inflation does. So you end up like getting poorer and poorer as time goes on. Like, I was buying coconut water like a few days ago, and it costs 90 rupees now. 90 rupees for coconut water. I was like shocked. I was like, 90 rupees is baat ka, like 90 rupees, that's too much. And when I
Hmm.
was a kid, it used to cost 9 rupees. And I remember the price had become 11 rupees for 9 rupees. And after school, I remember my mother like spending 20 minutes arguing with the coconut guy, like, what am I going to pay 11 rupees for? It used to be 9 rupees yesterday. And now I'm like 90 rupees. And how certain simple pleasures will just be like, as things become more expensive, as inflation rises, the amount of simple pleasures you can have will keep decreasing and decreasing and decreasing. So unless you find a way to make more money, which could either be like you are working harder at your job for an employer who will pay you more, or you build some kind of home based business that you practice like after your main job is done, or something or the other, right? Unless you find a way to make
Hmm.
more money, your quality of life degrades over time. It's just like one of those unfair realities of the modern economy. Like, how hard
Hmm.
is it to buy a house for a normal person? So many of my clients cannot buy a house unless they like spend like 40 years or 30 years paying it off, or
Right.
they have like a house, an existing house they can sell to fund the new house. So if you're like a guy, you don't have a house and you're buying it from scratch, it's like this is your life's work. Like, you have to spend your entire life just for this one house. And this was never the case like a long time ago. So things are becoming harder for salaried people for sure. And the taxation stuff is not helping. The taxation on salaries is just, it's just too high. um, and anything you purchase has GST on it. Personally, I think that we are squeezing out a lot of these middle class salaried people only to distribute free money to people who are significantly less productive. And that could be via whatever different schemes. I'm not going to get into this, but like, for example, right, there are certain schemes, like I think largely behind yojana, I think I'm not sure how true this is, but according to like Perplexity, the budget is like 42,000 crore rupees. The budget for ISRO is 12,500 crore rupees. So you can do the math, right? Where is your money actually going? It's not exactly benefiting you. It's just government is distributing it for like votes or whatever other reason. And sometimes it's justified. Like sometimes I can like make a case for it, like this poor farmer, and they need like the loan mafi thing. I can like see the point of some of them, but some of them are just like very blatant vote buying type things. So
Yep, yep, complete agreement. I definitely wanted to ask you this, Harsh. Um, what are your, and again, because of the fact that I follow you on Life Math Money, and I appreciate your views on this. What are your views on how to be a good father, a good parent?
So I can give you my views, but I will give you a caveat that some of these are like theoretical because my kid is not born yet, so I have not had the chance to put them in practice. But I've also had like the opportunity of seeing the outcomes of a lot of other people's parenting, because I have like a tax firm. I deal with a lot of people. I see like what their kids turn out to be. The main thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you give your children skills. So like a lot of people think I'm going to earn a lot of money and I'm going to leave the money to my kid, but that doesn't actually work out, because the kid just becomes useless. Like I have some clients who are like government officers or something, right? And they, let's say they left a lot of money for their kids. It could be like pure cash or like properties or what have you. And the kid does nothing. Like the kid will just the kids will like watch TV all day and play video games or something. And they will have like a bunch of properties where the rent is coming and they're spending the rent. And they have like money already, so, but they're not doing anything, right? And what is going to happen to the third and fourth generation, right? The money will eventually run out. And the way these kids they spend the money, like it's gonna run out really fast. Like they like like a new
But
car every 2 years.
I have two thoughts on this, Harsh. So whenever I see people getting jealous of someone who has inherited a lot of money, right? And people say, oh, this guy has so much money, he can do whatever he want. So whether they make something good out of it or not, we can still give them the benefit of doubt. But one thing I've always seen is I've never seen a person being happy when they have inherited money and they've never either built it up further or at least preserved it. I've never ever seen them happy. So one thing is that when we look at kids of the rich, right, or kids who've inherited wealth, i never feel I never feel jealous, because especially being a lawyer, I've seen what kind of uh, you know what kind of problems that they have to go through, right? And another thing I think, Harsh, is that there is, it's not really their fault either, if you, especially if you just give them money
Exactly.
and nothing else. Because I have a lot of friends who have inherited a lot of money, right? Or maybe who are in the process of inheriting money when their parents pass away, and so they're just waiting, biding their time. The problem with them is, I mean, when I started working, my first salary was 10,000 a month, right? And it is not that my parents were so super rich that me earning 10,000 a month is irrelevant, right? Or, you know even when I went from 10 to 20, it was a celebration for me. I went from 20 to 30, that was a celebration for me, and my parents kept me very grounded. But when I see my friends who have, inherited a lot of money, or who are in the process of inheriting, they know that there's this big pile of cash that we'll be getting, and they have access to cash. Anything and everything that they want to start out in, right, it becomes very irrelevant, inconsequential. You'll get a job which pays you
Exactly.
50,000. So what? You'll get a job which pays you 1 lakh a month. So what? But you have to start somewhere. But for these people, it's like 50,000 a month salary. I mean, that's like what I spend on a lunch with my friends. So how does it make sense for me to go and work for 8 to 16 hours a day every day to get the same amount at the end of the month? So that I mean, how do you blame them, right? In fact, I think I agree. You've given you when you said that it's better to give them skills instead of money. This is, in a way, you are handing them a curse.
You are completely correct. In fact, that's exactly what happens to so many people, right? Where it becomes like, it hurts their reputation if they're working a job, or like, if you're doing something
That
that
too.
doesn't make a lot of money. But what are you gonna do as a 21-year-old? Like you're not gonna make like 5 crores as 21. It's not gonna happen, right? So you are like very on point here. It's a curse. It really is a curse, right? It's like success handed to you, and now the only success that matters is more than this, but you can't actually do more than this, so you can't do anything. So it's a
Hmm.
curse. You need to give your kids like the right education and the right skills. Like a lot of people, right, they will spend a lot of time like on their businesses and what have you, but they don't like invest time with their kids. And that's actually a mistake. Like I've seen a lot of like clients, what happens is, the guy spent his entire life developing a business empire, and he's neglected his kids. Like his kid doesn't have the right skills and the right temperament because he was never developed in that way. And then the guy dies and this kid takes over the business and ruins it in like 5 years. It ruins it. So it's
Hmm.
that's like a big like thing. So make sure that you give your kids skills and develop the mindset and temperament. Like to put it in like a simple way, right? If me and you, right, like we lose everything. Let's say that we lose our all of our income, and we lose everything, right, and we're on the street. Within 5 years we would have a house, we would be making good money, like more than most people, and we would be like on the way to success, if not already successful, right? And why is that the case? The difference between us and a lot of other people is mindset and skills, right? You doing your lawyer thing, your social media thing, blah blah blah, all of that is a result of mindset and success. There are so many lawyers in India. How many of them are as successful as you, right? Like, so it's definitely a big factor. I would say that's really important. The other important thing is to make sure you feed the kid the right foods when they're young. And I'll tell you what, like every time I'm not doing so well, I'm feeling sick, or like going through like an emotional downturn or something, my natural thing is I start craving Maggie. Okay, I really like eating
Hmm.
Maggie. I was not craving it, and I'm craving like junk food, like vada pav or dabeli or what have you. Some kind of junk food. I really wanted, because when I was a kid, like when I'm very small, I kind of grew up eating those things, and now when I have like a bad moment, that's my comfort food. On the other hand,
Hmm.
my wife, right, like she grew up eating like apples and pears and natural foods. So when she's sick, she's like, I want to have an apple and I want to have a pear. And she's like naturally so fit. Like for me to be fit, I have to make sure I'm eating the certain amount of calories, protein, and I have to make sure I don't eat these foods. I have to like, manage cravings and things like she doesn't have to do any of that because her cravings are always for healthy things. I've never heard from her mouth that I really want to have a chocolate. It's always like, I want to have some grapes, I want to have some jamun, and oh,
I hate these people so much who, when I say, what dessert do you like? They say, I don't have dessert because, and I hear this from thin, fit people all the time. They'll never say, I don't eat dessert because it's not good for you. They'll always have some sort of a, very direct reason to not eat it. They'll say, I get a headache when I eat sweets, or I vomit when I eat sweets, or I get pukish, or I get jittery and anxiety when I eat sweets. So there's a very direct cause and action with any bad habit
mm.
that, oh my god, for me, I mean, I am so close to dying from diabetes, right? I have to really restrain myself from eating. And when I and someone in front of me says, "Oh, I don't eat sweets because X, Y, Z," and then I see, why are they stick thin at the age of 40 or 50, right? So I understand this is most probably this is the habit that they've built up over the years, as you mentioned about your wife, right?
Look,
So
but
this is
moreover,
definitely
like
something that.
a big factor of it is like what you were eating as a kid, because you develop those mental connections. So what do you actually crave, right? It's much easier to be healthy when you don't crave vada pav, right? As
Hmm.
opposed to like when you crave apples, right? If you're craving and you're craving an apple and you give into your craving, like you eat an apple,
Eat
like
five
who
of
cares?
them. What's gonna happen?
Exactly. So it's one of those things you can really set your kids like to success with. Make sure
So
your
on
kids
that
get.
analogy, I'm sure
Mhm.
the feeding the mind and not handing them an iPad or a cell phone when they're a toddler would also be very high on your list of
I'm not sure
do's
about
and
that,
don'ts.
right? I don't
Really?
know. Like, so I've seen a lot of these technological people, like Steve Jobs doesn't let his kid use iPads, what have you.
Okay.
But on the other hand, right, like I grew up on a computer, and one of the reasons I have all these businesses online is because of the fact that I grew up like using computers and what have you. So I can see both the pros and the cons of it, where the level of proficiency you have with technology is much higher if you start using them when you are a kid, as opposed to the proficiency you have when you are using them much later in life. So I will say that I'm not sure about this, right? There's only like one way to
I'm
learn.
sorry. I think there was some sort of a network issue with my phone. Just
Okay. Yeah, can you hear me now?
yeah, I can hear you now, but I'm just trying to kind of figure out why.
Hello?
Yes, am I audible to you, Harsh?
Yeah, you can I can hear you now. So
I don't know what's happening with my Wi-Fi. Yeah, it's all good right now, right?
yeah, it's perfect right now.
Okay, great. Yes, please proceed. Sorry.
Yeah, so I'm not exactly sure whether restricting computer usage is good or not, because the only reason I would attribute big portion of me doing what I do now to the fact that I grew up using computers and playing video games and what have you. And that made me very proficient with a lot of things, right? Like how to cheat in a video game, right? Like finding the cheat codes for a video game and like using the internet to discover what you want. So I will say that it's not entirely negative, but you have to make sure that the kid is like, so like I have like a cousin sister, okay, who's very small, and her parents will give her like the phone, and all she does on the phone is watch these very weird like K-pop. I don't know what it is, like some Korean singers, and that's just like brain dead thing, right? You're not like actually using your brain or anything. It's not interactive. So I would say that is definitely a bad thing. Like that is definitely
Hmm.
bad. But if your kid is playing video games and discovering things on the internet, I would say that's not exactly bad. You don't want him to do this all day and night, but it's also like beneficial to the kid. The other
It's
thing
a
you want to
very.
do, go on.
Please go ahead. Yeah, yeah. No, no, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
The other thing you want to do is you want to make sure you feed your kid enough protein. Like a lot of children in India are very short, partially because of genetics, but also like a big contributing factor is the lack of nutrition in a lot of Indian people's diet, right? Where they're eating a
Dal
lot of
roti.
carbohydrates and not a lot of protein.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you have to only eat meat, right? Like, my meat consumption is super high, but there are like a lot of ways to get protein in without having to eat meat. You could feed the kid whey protein, or a lot of milk products, or other protein rich foods, right? Doesn't have to be like meat. Or eggs are like great for kids. What happens is people are they just feed the kid like sugary foods and wheat and grains and what have you. And if you like actually put that in like some kind of nutrition calculator, you're giving the kid like 20 grams of protein. So the kid is not going to become like the tallest and smartest they could have been if they were fed the right nutrition. And if you look at various studies in developing countries, the height of kids correlates with protein quantity, versus in developed countries the heights of kids correlates with protein quality. So in developing countries like India, the diet is so deficient that just increasing the quantity of protein alone like makes a big difference. So like instead of like,
Hmm.
you could give the kid more wheat protein, which is like very low quality protein, and the kid's height will still increase because they're that deficient. On the other hand, in developed countries, they have like the basic stuff already met. So the
Right.
way you get a difference is by increasing the quality of protein, and you could make it like dairy protein or meat protein or egg protein or something like that, right? So by increasing quantity in India, you can make a big difference. And if you want to do the entire thing, you can increase protein quality. Now, like, there are like religious restrictions people have, and if you actually look at them, like mostly if you are a vegetarian, like you can give your kids a lot of milk and whey and things like that.
I
If you're a
came up
non
with a hack. I came up with a
Okay,
hack, and
tell me.
this is not any sponsorship deal. They know about me. Amul, thank God for them. Couple of months ago, I don't know if you know about this, but couple of I think months or maybe a year or so ago, they came out with their whey line of whey products, right? Whey protein powder, milk, and yogurt, and a bunch of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm so happy. This was the first time in my life, like I was able to get my parents out of the whole, protein ke dabbe le raha hai, protein. And I mean, obviously, I'm doing what I'm doing, right? I still go with a little bit of extra whey protein here and there, but I was finally able to convince my parents this is Amul. This is not some random, what they call as chemical protein. This is Amul. You trust them, right? And I was able to get convince my parents to start consuming a little bit of those Amul. I still haven't been able to convince them to go for the whey protein. But when Amul came up with protein enriched milk, which is actually like I think they just mixed in a lot of whey with their milk, or perhaps kind
They
of
use
left
skimmed
a
milk
lot of
powder.
that. Pardon?
I know what you're talking. They use skimmed milk powder, so which has like a lot of protein, and they remove out a lot most of the fat, so that makes it like
Right.
low calorie. I know
So
what you're
they have
talking
these
about.
Tetra
You also have
packs,
the
the
paneer
200
and
ml
everything.
Tetra packs, which are like 20 or 25 grams of protein. Phenomenal. So I just ordered like a huge like carton, and in fact, a bunch of them got expired as well, because my parents keep
They sell
forgetting.
them in like
But
32, right? Like you have to buy 32 if you buy them.
yeah.
Go
So
on,
I,
go
I
on.
did kind of like that whole carton thingy, and I was able to convince them. And for the first time in my life, I could see my vegetarian parents, right, get a little bit of that extra protein in. So very grateful to Amul for doing that and kind of getting a little more, like consciousness in the public's eyes. And in fact, another thing that now that you mentioned, I wanted to say in terms of technology helping out your kids. You're right. If it is unsupervised and if the kid just jumps into that kind of a direction, it becomes a big problem. In fact, I would say for me as well, my parents chose to restrict a lot of my internet and my technology access. But one thing they did kind of allow, which is incredible for the kind of um, financial position that we were in at the time when I was young, when I was, I think, around 12 or 13 years of age or 14 years of age. And so we did not have a lot of money, but my parents still kind of went a little out of their way to give me access to what I still remember to be the most wonderful things ever. Those were encyclopedia discs, right? So you used to have obviously those large
Hmm.
encyclopedia volumes, right? But those were also amazing, right? But one thing that really kind of was incredible before, like internet and Google and Wikipedia and YouTube and all of these things that came up, much before that, I would say 2004, 5, 6, I remember, was the time when these encyclopedia series came out, and they just full of delight. I'm looking at space, I'm looking at dinosaurs, I'm looking at like a million different things, and I'm definitely sure that a lot of it like added to uh, what my how my brain functions right now, what kind of information I have. So it does make sense, but I guess the point that you made is the right one, which is maybe supervised and productive access to technology and the internet. Hmm.
You are definitely right about the encyclopedia stuff. I would say like a one main thing, and now that you mention it, it reminded me of it, is that you should read to your children. I've seen a lot of
Hmm.
studies where people who read to the children turn out to be much more mentally developed than people who were not read to. And one of those things, it's a simple thing that you can do. You could like feed them a lot of stories that you could which could have like some kind of moral lesson or something, or it could just be like entertainment, like like anything. It doesn't have to be like religious or anything, any kind of stories for kids. And it's very good for their brains actually. And I'm sure you will have a lot of stories to tell your kids, given the amount of situations you face.
It's funny you mentioned this. I saw this comparison a couple of years ago. I have two cousins who have children who are almost the same age, and one cousin and his wife would keep telling their kid, "Why don't you read? Why don't you read? Study your books, study novels, do whatever, but just why don't you read?" And the kid just like, I don't like studying, right? I don't want to read books, right? I just want to do other stuff like watch, like say maybe TV, or go out and maybe play, which is not the worst thing in the world, but still at least do a little bit of reading. And on the other hand, I have another cousin who had whose child from day one, like just opens a book, starts reading, loves reading, and just read. And the only distinction I could see was that the first cousin, he or his wife, neither of them reads any book at all. And the second cousin and his wife both are voracious readers. And you can, any day you walk into their room, you'll find them at night with a novel or some sort of another book in their hand. And and that was also, I mean, as an addition to what you said, for learning for me, that if you want your kids to do something, you better be doing it yourself, rather than just preaching, rather than preaching and not following it. Perhaps the same thing applies to eating healthy as well. If you're eating crap and then you ask your kids to eat
Mm.
healthy, I think it's the same this thing.
Yeah,
Fantastic, Harsh.
lead by
This was
example,
very
right?
helpful. Pardon?
Lead by example.
Yes, exactly. I'm very happy that we did this, and I'm very excited to put this on my all of my this thing social media, because just because of the kind of work that I do, Harsh, right? All of my the stuff that I talk about, especially divorce law, it's so negative, like full of negativity. But today, whatever we talked about was just all productive, good work. So I'm very happy that we did this. I'm glad.
Likewise, brother. It's good to speak with you. One thing I would like to add is that a lot of people, right, they consume a lot of these divorce resources, and they become really scared of, like, oh, if I get married, I'm gonna get divorced, and they just like it kind of affects them negatively. I think what a lot of people will benefit from is just by like hiring some kind of legal professional, just anybody, okay, and then like talking with them and be like, okay, what precautions can I take to make sure that if something was to go wrong, like I don't get like very damaged, right? Because there are many things you can do to make sure that you are not like a big victim, right? There are a lot of big victims of these divorce courts, not everybody. There are many things you can do to minimize damage. So I think a lot of people will benefit from just speaking to an experienced lawyer. It doesn't cost that much money. It costs like 3 4 5 10,000 rupees or whatever, like not that much money, especially compared to like the cost of a divorce. And then like just discussing with them, like what precautions can I take, and you can make a lot of things. If you do a lot of things correctly at the get go, then you don't have all these problems, right? It's like buying insurance, not exactly insurance, but it helps you make a very informed decision, doesn't
Mhm.
cost that much money, and it takes away a lot of your fears, right? Like this happens on the internet, right? Like you get fed like this is going to happen and this is going to happen, and then you're going to lose all your money, you're going to lose your kids, your house is going to go away, your family will be jailed, and that can happen. But if you take, there are quite a few precautions you can take, and I'm sure like you could discuss them in a future video, or people can speak to you directly
In
about it as
fact,
well.
for those people who might be interested in knowing this, Harsh had actually floated the idea almost, I think, 1 or 2 years ago. And so a lot of people who reach out to me and they ask me, can you tell me in a concise way what are the things I should be careful about? I send them a link to the lifemathmoney.com article that I wrote about, I think, 1 or 2 years ago, which you were kind enough to publish, in which I talked in concise but very detailed way about what all precautions you can take before you can get married. And obviously what you said, for your specific situation, your net worth, opponents, I mean not opponent, but your partner's net worth, and every other factor, you can and should in fact consult a divorce lawyer. Interesting, you mentioned divorce insurance. I've talked about it a couple of occasions, because talking to a lawyer and figuring out where are your kind of problem areas, gaps where you could face problems, you sort it out. It is kind of like divorce insurance. So yeah.
Exactly. It's a, people will spend crores on their wedding, but like hesitate to spend like 5,000 rupees to talk to a professional and get the right advice. I would say like it's one of those things you should definitely do, especially if you're like a high earning man, and you're like you've come from like a decent family, you don't want all these problems, and you're like getting an arranged marriage to a woman you don't really know that well. It's a good investment to make, and you never know, like I wish that no one ever has to use that knowledge, in the sense that no one actually gets divorced, but bad things happen sometimes, and it's good to be prepared, and especially if you are like worried about these things, it's very useful to get it. Not that expensive, and you learn so much, and so many things you can do right now that will help you so much in case things go wrong. And I hope things never go wrong for anybody. This is not like
Amazing.
me like
I
saying
tell
it will
everybody
go
who
wrong.
consults me, I wish this never falls upon you. And I wish, even if people come to me with problems, I say, I wish for you to get out of this as soon as possible. As soon as possible.
Exactly. So yeah, it was great talking with you, and we should do it again sometime.
Absolute
Yes.
pleasure. Absolute pleasure. It was a lot of fun. And yeah, we should definitely kind of schedule, like, once every 3 month kind of a live catch up update. And I'll definitely check in another 4 months to see, how the whole, the whole making a baby process worked out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man. All right, I'm gonna end the recording and yeah.